started. Welcome to today's Leadership Lounge. It's all around achieving goals, looking at team vision, OKRs, KPIs, and all the acronyms. Today we're joined by our panel, Luke, Maria and Tracey, which I'll go into in a moment. But just to give you a little bit of background, and for those of you who are new to Leadership Lounge, this is episode 5. We've been running these since the last week of April now. We've done all sorts already. We've looked at how to keep your employees emotionally healthy. We've looked at how to keep a leadership mindset. We've looked at how to drive productivity remotely in particular, and how to keep your teams in sync. And this week we're kind of looking at that next step then. So how do you actually develop the team, and how do you keep them moving forward and growing in their roles? So today's panelists are from all areas of the business. Some of them are team leaders, some of them department leaders, some of them looking at more sort of organizational, and Maria's looking at kind of more project-led stuff and stakeholders. So if we go into introductions, Maria, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Hi, Sheila, thank you. So I'm Maria Valencia, I'm Chief of Staff at PaymentSense. I joined a bit over a year and a half ago, and I work on delivering strategic initiatives, so very cross-functional projects or initiatives. I have led and delivered programs of very different sizes for, I think, more than 8 years. Before PaymentSense, I was working in management consulting, where I was helping very large companies to tackle the different challenges that they were facing. And these were mostly around transformation. So it involved a lot of managing several different initiatives, designing and delivering solutions.
Brilliant, thank you, Maria. Luke, do you want to go next?
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm the head of talent acquisition here. My anniversary is on Wednesday, so I would have been here 1 year then. I'm responsible for all of recruitment across the business, so everything from HQ, Hull, Bristol, to all of field sales as well. At the height of my team here, it's been 11 people, and prior to here I was at WeWork, where I had a team of 5 across Berlin and London. And then prior to that, I had managerial experience at Arup, where I led a team across America, India, and the UK.
Brilliant, thank you, and happy anniversary for Wednesday. Tracey, do you want to go next?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tracey. I'm the HR business partner for Hull, and I also look after Belfast and Dublin. My role predominantly is to work very closely with Chloe in London to look at the culture, to look at how we can support people, how we induct people into the business, and then how we perform in terms of the journey going forward. My history is not really HR. I managed contact centres. I worked for RBS for 12 years and then moved on to set up 2 contact centres from Greenfield site from 0 to 300 people. So I have lots of experience in the operational world, not just the HR world as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Tracey. Okay, so as we always do, I want to kind of kick off by going into a bit more sort of context setting, so we know kind of what today's session is all about and what it is that we're actually doing. So I'm going to start with vision, well, achieving goals overall. Let's have a look at kind of the context for today's session. So in today's session, I've already kind of put on there that we're going to be looking at vision, we're going to look at KPIs and OKRs, but how does that all fit in the kind of grand scheme of things? And you know, I like a diagram and I like to kind of show how it works, but you've got there on one side in orange, you've got KPIs, and then on the other side, you've got the OKRs. So they're the 2 kind of buckets that we have, but overarching both of those are vision. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in a second, and the panelists today are going to give us some more insight to this. But vision overarches that, and you have company vision, so that where's everyone going, what's the direction everyone's going in. But within that, you also should have a team vision. And I think it's really important that we don't forget the team vision aspect of it and what it is we're trying to achieve in our departments and in our teams. So you need to set a team vision. I'm going to show you kind of things that you need to consider when you're doing that. And then underneath that vision, you can start to look at the KPIs. And the KPIs are more of the kind of processes, and they're the business as usual. So KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. And it's those measures, statistical measures, so it is a measurable thing, those statistical measures that show you that you are performing as you should be as a business, okay? And again, I'm going to give you some examples of what we look at within Payment Sense. So what are they, and how do you maintain the kind of status quo? How do you make sure you're moving in the right direction? Your OKRs are called, they're objectives and key results. So they are same thing in terms of you define and you measure them, but they're about moving the company forward. So they're very much about growth and how do you advance to your vision. So you should always kind of have a set of both. And interesting enough, not many people do that. And I'm going to ask you after this session to go away and actually have a look and see if you can define what your vision, your KPIs and your OKRs actually are. So if we have a look at vision to start with, I've just put some examples of some company visions that you can see there. So Alzheimer's Association, their vision is a world without Alzheimer's, which I think is really really striking actually. It really makes you think, wow, that sounds amazing. Facebook, connect with friends around the world and the world around you. Microsoft, a computer on every desk and in every home. And LinkedIn, create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. So they're quite powerful and quite aspirational visions. And that first bullet point there on when you're deciding your vision is to dream big. It should take the team out of their comfort zone. So you need to really make it an aspirational goal. So for your team vision, I would say do the same. It's not going to be as kind of big and large scale as these ones, but it should be something that makes your team feel like, wow, like that's something to really want to do. That's something that actually would be amazing if we can do that. And within that, discuss with your team why they're doing what they're doing. So people need purpose. People need to understand why they're doing something and what it actually, why it's meaningful to the business, to them, to the team, whatever concept it is. They need to understand exactly why they're doing what they're doing. What is it going to lead to? And I'd advise to be open and honest with that. If it's about revenue generation, tell them it's about revenue generation. If it's about serving customers, tell them it's about serving customers and getting better NPS scores or whatever it is, but make sure you're discussing the why with them. And then make it personal as well. So making it personal to the team, it's easier said than done. A lot of the time leaders will kind of think that they need to decide what the vision is and they will go away and set it. But actually, if you make it personal to the team, particularly your team vision, if you allow them to help you build that, you're going to find they're going to have more buy-in. They're going to have more, it's meaningful to them. It helps them understand the why. It helps them dream bigger as well because they've helped create it. So they take this ownership over it. And there's some great kind of workshops that you can run with your team around creating the team vision and what it is you want to achieve. And then be clear on how you're going to achieve it. So it's great telling everyone what you want to do, but if you don't tell them how you're going to do it, you're going to find it very hard for you and for them to align and to actually get there as well. So you need to then start to think about your strategy. And the way that you can do that is using your OKRs and your KPIs, and then it becomes very, very clear for your teams on how they're actually going to do it. So if we have a look at objectives and key results, so the OKRs, it's a strategic framework that helps you set clear priorities, and it's very much growth orientated, like I said. So this is actually a framework that helps you prioritize what you need to be doing as a team. It's not looking at your day-to-day, it's not looking at kind of the bottom line necessarily. It's thinking about, right, where do we want to be in the longer term and how are we going to get there? And I'd kind of recommend for this, with your objectives and key results, that you look at it more on either quarterly, half yearly or annual basis. Reason being is because if you start to look at it monthly, you're not really going to drive that growth. It's too short a time frame with 4 weeks. That's where you'd kind of look at your KPIs to look at, right, we can measure KPIs on a monthly basis. When you're looking at OKRs, you want to look at minimum, it should be quarterly, up to about 12 months. You don't really want to go any longer than 12 months, just purely because you don't keep that flexibility as a team. And it's hard to pivot if you just keep in one direction without having that ability to kind of pivot and change around. So here you've got, it splits into two. So you have the objective, which is qualitative. So I've put an example in there for Payment Sense, is growing the field sales team. So this is the first objective that I got when I started reporting into the commercial team, into Steve Jason. And it was around, right, we need the objectives to grow field sales. Okay, so to make that bigger and better and generating more. And then if you looked at the key results, you're looking at kind of maybe between 3 to 5 key results. So they are measurable components that allow you to get to grow the field sales team. So again, some examples were to decrease the seller churn. I've put by 20% and 50%, but they're made up numbers. But overall, it's decrease seller churn, increase new starter onboarding, and resolve seller issues on the first touch. So you can see there, they're not KPIs, they differ slightly to performance indicators, and they're kind of bigger strategic goals that we're looking for that lead us to that objective. Okay, so you've got just 3 there, but actually a lot of work goes into that. So decreasing seller churn comes from a number of different factors. It's around engagement, it's giving them the tools. Have they got the right marketing processes? Do they have the right support from their managers? Are their managers able to support them? Increasing new starter onboarding, you have to invest a lot of money to do that. Do we have the money to increase that? Are we getting the right return from new starter onboarding? Do we have venues available for it? And then resolving seller issues on first touch was kind of what led us to bring over sales support into the sales team as well. So we then worked with them and shaped that team, so they're actually fixing issues for sellers on the first touch as well. So a lot of different variables go into the results, the key results, and that's why you only have a few and you do it over a longer period of time. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's the first bit, objectives and key results. And again, like I said, keep in mind that's your growth orientation. That's where you're going for growth. If you're looking at the here and now, the business as usual, you're looking at the key performance indicators, and it's output orientated. And you'll notice in both of them, they both have the word key. It is to try and align you to have kind of prioritize and to have just a few, but KPIs, you can have a long list of things for different departments, and that's okay. It really is what works for you. But again, if I use our field sales example, a KPI would be kind of measurable outputs from field sales force. So for example, we have a look at average docs in and lives per seller. We look at the error rates. We look at LTR. We look at LTV to CAC. So what is the return that we're getting for every business that we sign up? We look at the number of productive sellers every month. We look at the number of new starters every month. And there's many more that we kind of look at and different variables we look at, but that's examples of key performance indicators. So if we get those right and in line with where we want to be, we know we're moving in the right direction for field sales. So that's the difference between the 3 of them, between vision, OKRs and KPIs. And hopefully that's kind of got you thinking about, right, how am I measuring it for my team? And I would urge you to take some time just to note down today even, right, what is my team vision? What are my OKRs and what are my KPIs? And do my team actually know it? Are my team aware of this is what we're doing and this is how we measure it? And if they're not, start to think about how you can communicate that and how you can keep them aligned to that and informed of those things. It's really important that people know kind of what their North Star is and what they're aiming for. If they don't, they lose direction, they don't perform as you want them to perform. It becomes difficult for you to then have conversations with them because you haven't been clear up front of what it is you're trying to achieve. And also you don't achieve that kind of aspirational team or company goal as well. So on that note, that kind of leads us nicely now into our panel discussion. So Maria, Luke and Tracey are going to talk to us about how they actually implement this in their teams and how they do this across the business. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go straight into our first question. So I'm going to put this to Maria to start with. So while we're talking about kind of vision, let's set the scene and find out kind of what your guys' vision is at the moment. So Maria, can you tell us what vision means to you and what the vision is for your team? I know you've got a limited team, but for what you do, what's your vision?
Absolutely. So thanks, Sheila. I mean, I would agree with you in that vision is incredibly important. And it's really, really important when you're leading initiatives because it is, as Sheila was saying, how you get buy-in from people. And when you're leading initiatives, you need things from people that you don't necessarily line manage. And it may be people who already have a day job. It may be people who are already busy or people that have been doing things in a certain way and you need them to do a change. So you really need to inspire and you really need to make sure that what you're doing makes sense so that people buy into it and acknowledge that this is better for everyone involved and would want to do it. Because when you're doing cross-functional, as I was saying, when you are doing cross-functional initiatives, you're not necessarily, like, they're not necessarily your resources, or they're not necessarily even in your team or in your area. So vision is incredibly important, and spending time communicating it, and spending time, understanding any questions that people may have around it, understanding any reservations people may have around them, and resolving them just makes it stronger, and makes it easier for you to deliver the things that you need to. The vision for what I do at Payment Sense really is to create value for the company, and mostly it's through creating value for our customers, but in general, it's really to create value for the company.
Brilliant, thank you, Maria. And with that, you said about having the buy-in and being able to decide what's the best way to kind of go forward with that. So how, is there any way before you present it to everyone, do you soundboard it at all? How do you kind of get to that point where you decide what's the right thing?
Absolutely, and when it's really important to every person who's involved in your initiative, you should not only try to influence, but also let them influence you. Maybe they know something that they surely know something that you don't, and they surely can be that soundboard to what you're trying to do. And once you've, let's say, convinced the people who are the experts or who are the key stakeholders, it just becomes a lot easier to go ahead with defining the vision that you can communicate to the rest of the company.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so same question to you, Luke. So what does vision mean to you, and what is the vision for your team?
Yeah, so it's going to sound like I'm really piggybacking off your description, but I think for me, it really is about just having an end goal that as a team we all know we're working towards. And then I guess everything you do is, getting to that end goal. So if I look at it for TA, the vision has always been to make sure the company has the right people in the right place at the right time. So, whether it's building the office in Bristol, hiring field sellers in specific postcodes, it's just about making sure the right people are there. And I think the way we've done that has evolved. I think, yeah, vision, how you get to it can evolve over time. So when I originally joined here, we were really heavily outsourced. We had an RPO on site, agency usage pretty high. So, it's not the best way to do recruitment. So the way I saw that was, okay, we need to hire some really strong recruiters, get them trained up, get the company to buy into them. And that's going to help us on the way to our vision. Now that we've done that and we've got a good team in place, it's much more about, developing the employer brand so that they're coming to us as an employer of choice. And I guess in some ways making our life easier, but, making it so that everyone knows about Payment Sense, everyone wants to work for us. And I guess rather than having to headhunt every single role, it's about, getting as much inbound traffic as we can. And so, yeah, I say, the end goal or the vision is just to make sure that we always have the right people, but how we get there evolves. And every time you achieve one part of the journey, I guess you evolve that and bring another part in.
Yeah, I think you're completely right there, and I think it's good that you started with foundations as well first, and kind of built the team you needed, and then worked on kind of what's the next step, and almost broke it down step by step, which is good. Cool. Okay, so Tracey, same question to you then. So, what does vision mean to you, and what's the vision for your role, should I say, rather than team, and what you do?
Yeah. So vision to me is very similar to what everybody else has said. I guess it's having a proper, clear understanding of what the company values are, what the company goals are, and how we all work on a daily basis to achieve those goals. I guess from a people perspective, our ultimate vision is to be number one in the best companies to work for. And everything that we do on a daily basis kind of leans to making sure that we keep moving forward. Last year we didn't even get a star. This year we did amazingly fantastic. And we got the 3 stars, but there's also lots more that we can do. So when we look at how we become the best company to work for, we've got to look at people that Luke brings in. What's their journey like? What's their experience like? What's their training like? The training is not our responsibility, but we do, as the people team, have a responsibility to make sure that that's right and it fits for the guys that are coming in. And then moving on to their life in Payment Sense, what does that look like? Do they have the right training? Do they have the right management skills on board? Do they have the progression opportunities? And then when they leave Payment Sense, talk to them about what was their experience, what would they change, what did they love? and making sure that we continue to develop and grow and learn from those types of things, and make sure that we implement new things along the way. So my vision is to get to be number one. We're up against a lot of amazing companies. Will we ever get there? That could be a vision I have that maybe is out of reach, but it's certainly to get into the top 10, because I think that's more than doable. I think the team that we've got are amazing, and will help everybody on the journey to get there. And it's ensuring that what I do and what the people team do on a daily basis kind of take us on that path and that journey.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there, and I think it's you make a really good point there around the fact that you have a team vision, but you also need to utilise other teams in order to get there. It's really important that other teams understand your vision as well, and Best Companies is a great example because everyone in the company felt part of that. You guys did a great job of making everyone feel that that was all everyone's goal was to get to that as well. Yeah, which is good. So on the sticking with you, Tracey, in terms of kind of where we are as a company, vision changes. We're going from startup into scale up. We're scaling up quite quickly, and there's always this risk of losing that kind of vision of what we're trying to achieve. So how do you make sure that it doesn't lose relevance with change for anyone creating any kind of team vision? How do you make sure it doesn't lose its relevance?
I think ensuring that we keep speaking to people and we keep getting feedback from people. So you'll see office vibes come through on a regular basis, which gives everyone the opportunity to share their own thoughts, their own feelings on how things are going, on how they feel about the manager, how they feel about the business, how they feel about the job. And part of the people's team role is to make sure that we're assessing that and that we're feeding that back and having conversations with managers, not in a way that we're saying, you know, your people are giving us really bad feedback, you're not doing the right thing, but looking at, you know, these are some concerns that have been raised, maybe we could think about doing these things slightly differently, or if these things are working, let's share that with everybody across the wider business. So making sure that we're getting the feedback and that we're actually acting on it. Or if we do get feedback and people want things to change and we can't change them, that we communicate that and we say, why can't things change? You know, it has to be this way, but this is why. And making sure that everybody who has a voice, that shared that voice through giving us the feedback, has been listened to as well.
Yeah, I think feedback loops are crucial in kind of any aspect, aren't they? And just making sure and taken on board as well, not just hearing it, but doing something as well. So crucial.
Exactly.
All right, so moving over to you, Maria. We've talked about the need for you to have your vision aligned to performance metrics. How do you get to that point? So how do you decide your OKRs and your KPIs? What's the process you go through?
Yeah. So first of all, I would recommend everyone to do this. Ultimately, it's really important to understand that the underlying goal of every for-profit company is to create profit. So just keep in the back of your mind that everything that you do, even if you're not directly generating revenues or if you're not directly controlling costs, ultimately everything that everyone does in the company, at one point it needs to tie back to that underlying goal of every single company, which is generating profit. So it's a good practice to just keep that in the back of your mind when you're setting up targets. Obviously, like in what I do, it depends on the initiative, but you do wanna choose OKRs and KPIs that are not only tied to your vision, obviously, but again, having in the back of your mind that that ultimately, if what you're doing and the KPIs that you're deciding go against generating profit, then these might be good temporarily, but ultimately they will need to evolve. For example, Facebook was free of ads in the early days, and I don't know, their KPIs must have been something like, you know, have as many users as we can, and that is, and obviously keeping up a page like Facebook is very expensive. So even if that was the KPI at the beginning, at one point, and that made sense at that moment because they wanted to reach as many people as possible, at one point it had to change. So it made sense at the moment while they were growing, but at one point it needed to change because obviously they needed to monetize what they do. So it changed from, you know, how many people do we have, to actually, you know, how many ads we can serve, how many marketing deals are we getting, etc., etc. So, like I said, when you're setting KPIs and OKRs, keep in the back of your head that if what you're doing is not economical in the long term, it might still make sense, but you might need to change it in the future. So, for example, I don't know, a company I used to consult for, they had this huge drive for for NPS, but without keeping in the back of their minds like what it was going to cost. And obviously it was very successful, but it was very, very expensive, so it wasn't really sustainable. So when, for example, what I'm doing, which is generating value, I need to make sure that the revenue uplift that I think we're going to have with someone is worth what we're investing in it. So one of the really important KPIs that I always look at is return on investment, or revenue generating, or or ongoing costs and things like that. In teams, for example, so back when I was with the customer success management team, what we wanted to create was this great experience for enterprise customers. But the reason why we wanted to create this great experience for enterprise customers was because we saw how much value they brought to the company. So we had to balance, again, those things up. So one example was the things that we were tracking were NPS, like we wanted them to be happy. Churn, we wanted to make sure that making them happy was translating into them not leaving us. And then revenue growth. So we wanted to make sure that them being happy was not only translating to them staying with us, but them also giving us more of their business, or referring more of their friends or sister companies to join us. I would also be aware that the KPIs that you're tracking are going to influence the day-to-day decision making. So you need to make sure that you balance them out. So for example, in this CSM example, you want to make sure that NPS is being balanced by revenue, for example, because in your mind where you're setting them, just take them to the extreme. So if you were making day-to-day decisions, what would be the extreme to make NPS super high? I don't know, giving people free stuff or not charging them for things, etc., etc. So then take it back, like, okay, what can I balance it with? And then that balance was, for example, revenue growth. So we want to make sure that they're having a great experience, but that we're kind of like paying for that or generating value on the back of that great experience. So I would always urge you to take those KPIs to the extreme, because your teams or your, in this case, your initiatives are going to be driven by the KPIs, and you want to make sure that you're not setting up incentives that might not be sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. The CSM example is brilliant, and I think you're right. You really do have to balance and not just be completely revenue. That customer experience piece is crucial. And I like what you say there about kind of thinking, what's the best service? That's the Airbnb 12-star model. What's the very best we can do, and how do we work our way backwards? But how do we make sure it's still the right decision for the company in terms of revenue and those pieces? Thank you. Luke, how do you do it for your team?
So I think to start with, we break down the vision, right? So I think all the OKRs, KPIs, etc., you have to have the mindset if everyone achieves these 100%, it's going to bring you closer to your vision or help you achieve your vision. So I guess I kind of work backwards from there. And if we look at TA, we've got like a core 5 kind of like KPIs really. So you've got candidate experience metrics, we've got data integrity, we've got like core recruitment metrics, like employer branding initiatives, etc. So we've got these core ones, but in terms of how much each person is, I guess, responsible for them, we just contextualize it from there. So if we look at something like Hull, for example, it's a really small world and we've got a really good employer brand there. Everyone in Hull knows us as an employer. So, it doesn't make sense for me to target the whole recruiter in the same way that I would for something like our technology recruiter, where we maybe don't have a bigger brand around that. So for our tech recruiter, yeah, I think the employer branding initiatives is around 30%, so things like attending events, whereas up in Hull it's maybe 10%, but then there's a lot more around candidate experience, you know, there. So I guess it's, like I said, looking at the vision, which for us is around making sure we have all the right people in the right place at the right time, and thinking, what does each recruiter need to do to help us achieve that vision? And like I said, it's, you kind of personalize it, customize it in that sense, but at the same time, there's some underlying ones that we just don't flex on. So for me, data integrity, and I think we'll probably talk about that at some point as well, but data integrity to me is one of the most important things, in being able to take a data-driven approach. So I guess regardless of your context, that forms part of your KPIs and a big part of them. Whereas so for the other 4 strands of, I guess, the vision KPI piece, they're much more flexible depending on, I guess, the context that you're operating in, really.
That's quite clear actually. And in terms of the way you look at it as well, what are our non-negotiables and what are our team ones, and then what are our individual ones as well? So what does each individual recruiter have to do? I think again that's important as well to know that KPIs and OKRs don't have to necessarily be a group thing. You can have it at individual levels because you've got different focuses, like you said. Okay, good. So Tracey, obviously yours is slightly different in that it's not a team, and your KPIs and OKRs look at the entire company and all the satellite offices that you work with and things. So what do you do for that? What are your kind of metrics that you do, and how do you get to the decision on what you're going to look at?
Yeah, so it's interesting what you were saying there, Sheila, about not everyone has to have the same KPIs or OKRs, be that individual or be that site. For example, I will concentrate very much on one specific area for it. Let's take example, attendance or absence. Maybe much higher in one particular area, stroke building, than another. So my focus, my KPI, my support that I will give to that specific site will be very different and very differently focused than on another. So what I will do, I will use a lot of the information that we've got. We've got information from Workday, we've got information from Office Vibe. The most important one to me is the ad hoc conversations that I have with people. That could be in cigarette corner or the coffee area, just talking to people about how they think and feel, and I guess what the vibe is around the culture of the business, and then making sure that I link that back to what the data is telling me to then make suggested changes or suggested focus areas for the business going forward. So again, like you say, Sheila, yes, I will look at different metrics, well, the same metrics for every site, to be fair, but then I will tailor what I do or what I suggest or work on with the managers for that specific site based on what that data is telling me and what the people are saying.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way to validate it, isn't it? Not just looking at the data metrics, but then that sort of verbatim feedback as well, especially for your role. It really helps you kind of validate all of that data as well.
Yeah, I think if you just look at numbers tell you one thing, but it can lead you up the wrong path. I've experienced that before where when I worked in a contact centre and I was managing some clients, and the data was telling me that there was something wrong with their data, their physical customer data. So we kind of jumped on that bandwagon, we had the conversation, we went into this being like, you know, you need to change your data provider, you need to change this, that and the other, blah, blah, blah. But in actual fact, it was a product issue, not the actual data issue. So the product that we were looking to sell for that specific customer wasn't really, it was Mothercare customers. The product that we were selling wasn't really the right thing to sell to Mothercare customers, but if we sold it to the Debenhams customer, due to the, you know, the profile of that type of customer, it flew off the shelf. So make sure that you really get to the nooks and crannies of not just what the numbers are telling you, but what people are saying, what the feedback is from your customer, because it might be two very, very different things, and you might go down the wrong path initially if you don't do that and if you don't view the wider picture.
Great, yeah, thank you for that. And I think you've touched on the kind of the next part that I wanted to look at around some of the tools that you use. So you use Workday and Office Vibe and tools like that. Yeah. Is there anything else that you use to measure, apart from verbatim feedback, but any other tools that you use in order to do your data analysis?
I think I think it's more the workday stuff. Definitely my strongest one is the office vibe. It's going to be different for different people in different roles. You know, the office vibe feedback for someone who works in marketing may not be massively relevant or helpful. So I think it depends on what role you do. I think it depends on what area of the business that you're focusing on and what it is that you're trying to achieve. You know, if I was going to look at improving sickness absence, and I wouldn't necessarily look at workday, I'd look at workday to tell me how much absence we've got, but then I'd look at office vibe to tell me what the feel of the people were, you know, were they getting on with the managers, were they hitting the numbers, what role were they in, if they were constantly getting customer complaints, is that impacting on them as a person, and therefore their motivation's lower. So really looking at everything that you've got available, finding the cause of what it is that you're looking at, and then taking action appropriately. But as I said, don't just look at one number, or don't just listen to what someone's saying, because you might have people saying, you know, everybody's unhappy, this particular person, you know, in my world, I do get this a lot. Everybody's unhappy in the team, we're not happy with our manager, we're not happy with the way that things are going in the call centre, blah, 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 blah. But when you actually look at it, it might be one or two people, and they've got a particular issue, they might not be performing for whatever reason, but the rest of the team are. And had I not looked at the wider office vibe feedback, and had I not looked at the wider workday data telling me, you know, this, you know, absence isn't a specific issue, it's just something with this individual or with this particular team. And then again, I could have made the wrong decisions and focused on the wrong areas. So it's important that you review everything that you've got and make sure that you uncover really what's going on.
Yeah, build a picture around it and
yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so coming over to you, Luke, what tools do you use? What programs and tools do you use to measure all your data?
Oh, I've got a real glare this time. Hang on a minute, let me just fix that. Okay, so the biggest one for me, just trying to the biggest one for me is Workday. So we implemented Workday recruitment module probably around 2 to 3 months after I joined here, and that's been really valuable for us. I think prior to that, we didn't maybe do so much around measuring return on investment with things like sources or recruiter performance. So I guess Workday's been number one for me. And then, to be honest, I'm a bit old school. I still like using Excel and like building my own ones and doing a bit of manual data entry from time to time. So when it comes to like source analysis and seeing the kind of return on investment we get on a lot of that, yeah, I just do it in Excel. But yeah, I think that's the really good thing about Workday, and anyone that doesn't use it, or I guess doesn't use it to its potential, there's a lot you can do with it and a lot you can customize, and can be a little bit daunting when you start using it to begin with and try building it, but once you get the hang of it, it can be a really powerful tool.
Great, thank you. And sorry, and the same question over to Maria. So what tools do you use, Maria? What sort of data analysis tools or programs do you use?
Well, when in the early days of an initiative, you really don't have any data built in because you still haven't built anything. So what do you do is a lot of like modeling in Excel, or looking at what other competitors are doing, or what initiatives like this have had an impact. But then once you start implementing, it is really important to track how it's doing, because I mean, otherwise you don't know if you're hitting anything of the things that you said you would. So for example, for business funding, BI helped us a lot setting up tracking and reporting with information that we're getting from our partner Banking Circle, and also Laura Prince and Jack Webb helped us a lot to set up a lot of the internal reporting in Zendesk. And Zendesk is another super interesting tool, because like I would echo what Luke said, it can appear daunting at times, and we probably don't know how many things we can use of it. And it was great once we could finally have all our processes on Zendesk, because at any point of time, we could see where leads were at different points, and understand how they were progressing, identified any points of the process we could improve, etc. So I mean, any tool that you can use to track it's really like it's time well spent setting it up. And if you need to have a chat with the tech team or with the BI team or whoever you need to help you track, it's definitely worth the time and effort.
Yeah, and I think you're right in saying, like, plan for it at the beginning as well, and make sure you're doing it from the beginning, even if it is Excel or whatever, because it helps you stay on top of it. And to Luke's point and to yours around having programs that actually do the tracking for you is really helpful if you can have those programs that do that. Okay, cool. So just sticking with you, Maria, obviously the within sort of having a team vision, it needs to align to the company vision and what the company is trying to achieve. So you've talked a lot about the fact that it's obviously we're there for revenue generation as well, and that's part of what our company is driving towards, and then obviously the customer experience as well. But it's meaningless kind of working on your vision if it doesn't align to that. So how do you align that? How do you make sure your stakeholders are always aware? What are the kind of steps that you take when you're doing any of your initiatives to make sure that everyone's bought into it and everyone's aware of what you're doing and it aligns to what we want?
Yeah, I think I'm one of those horrible people that just do lots and lots of meetings, and I'm sorry for everyone in the call who has had to sit in a lot of meetings with me, but really for aligning people and for making sure that what you think you are, like, that not only you think that you're doing, but what is aligned to vision, but also that, you know, the people above you think the same thing, is to present what you're thinking. And it helps me a lot to, like, when I've planned something or when I've defined an initiative or defined something, it's really, really useful to get those key stakeholders in the room, present back to them, and just, you know, get the feedback from them directly and be like, okay, this is the vision. Is this is what I want to do? Is this aligned with what we want to do as a company? What other things in the company are going on that I should be aware of? Or maybe at that point they can be like, I don't know if this is where the company is going, given that we're also doing this and this and this in this other area. So the communication is just very, very important. And like I said, I probably over communicate at points, but it's, in my view, it's really time well spent.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people shy away from it as well, and actually, you're right, it's crucial. Everything boils down to communication normally anyway, but it is crucial to just over communicate it. It's better to over than under communicate something. Okay, so coming over to you, Luke. One of the things that you can obviously, what can happen is you set these great team vision, you set the great OKRs, KPIs, but then people don't perform or they don't hit them. So how do you handle that kind of underperformance element of it as well, and people not aligned to it? What would you say would be your process?
Yeah, so I think for me, I mean, first of all, it's just being really honest about it. I think, you know, throughout my career, I've seen people underperform, and, you know, often the last person to actually find out they're not performing or not meeting expectation is the person themselves, and people talk behind people's back and stuff, and it just breeds such a bad environment. So I think first and foremost, if somebody's not achieving, you just need to have an honest conversation and say to them, look, you're not. Find out if there's a why behind it. You never know. There could be a bigger context. There could be something going on at home. You just don't know. So I guess just having a really honest conversation with someone, whether it's in your weekly one-to-one or whatever, just doing that first of all. And then I think second of all, especially when you're a leader, it's really important that you take a solution-oriented approach to it. So I think a lot of people, you know, you're not performing, go fix that, or they have that real kind of mindset around it, and they don't really offer any help or advice. I guess the reason, you know, I like to think the reason I'm in the role I'm in is because I was a half decent recruiter. So, you know, I've probably been through it before myself, and I've probably had to think up solutions or been given solutions myself. So, yeah, I think first and foremost, be really honest with people, and then, you know, come up with solutions together and make sure they own that solution. So, you know, follow up a week later and see. And I guess if they're not doing that, and I guess if there's not a willingness to kind of fix the problem, then I guess the conversation changes over time. But, you know, if you hire the right person, they've got the right attitude, you know, it's rarely insurmountable. Like you can normally work through things. You just need to, like I said, be honest and be solution oriented in how you approach it all.
Great, yeah, I like that. I think the honesty is really crucial, and I think transparency goes kind of hand in hand with that as well. And actually, one, make sure they're aware of what the KPIs are and the goals are. Often we kind of just assume people know, and then secondly, actually show them as they're going through this journey how they're performing against it, and keep it like there's nothing worse than kind of allowing it to go on for time and then you give the feedback so late that they're baffled as to what's happened.
Yeah, and it's too late to fix it normally then, and there's probably so much ill will with their stakeholders or whatever, particularly in recruitment, right? If you're not delivering, it can turn nasty pretty quick. So yeah, you just need to, like I said, just approach it head on and be comfortable having that conversation and realize it's not personal. You're actually doing it for them. And I think it's actually it's harder to have that conversation, right? So whenever somebody gives me negative feedback, I think, you know what, it was a lot easier for you not to tell me this. So if you're on the receiving end of it as well, I guess kind of appreciate that the person cares enough to try and fix it with you.
Yeah. And at what point, Luke, do you say that actually this isn't fixable and I need to make a drastic decision because it happens?
It does. It's happened to me here in the past. I guess for me, it comes down to like the underlying motivation. If you feel that they don't want to fix it anymore, or they've lost the desire or the motivation, I always think it's really hard. I'm quite a big believer in people being self-motivated. I think it's really hard. You know, you can help people, you can mentor people, but if people don't care, if they don't want to deliver or don't want to fix it, there's not really much you can do with that. So I guess for me, the moment I think they don't care anymore, that's when the conversation changes from me trying to help you to me thinking, you know, are you better off somewhere else, for example?
And again, is that quite an honest conversation as well? Do you initiate that conversation to say, actually, perhaps this isn't the right fit now?
Yeah. For me, honesty is everything. I think if you stop being honest with your team, like your team will not come with you on the vision, for example. Like everything we're talking about, if you're not honest about things, it just won't work. So yeah, like I said, it's not my favorite conversation to have, but you know, sometimes you just got to have it, and it's, you know, it's for the good of the team, it's for the good of the business. And if you've got a vision you're aiming to get to, you need to have people on the journey that believe in that and want to get there. And if they don't, they're going to derail your vision very quickly. So
that's a good point. All right, thank you. Just moving over to you, Tracey, then. So often people think that with KPIs and OKRs, they need to offer some kind of reward or incentive, and most likely it's to be monetary rewards, so bonuses and commissions and things like that. But is there anything else that our team leaders and managers can offer as that kind of reward for getting there, for achieving it? What kind of examples have you seen or used in any of your roles?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in businesses where we've struggled to pay people's wages for some time when we were initially in the setup phase. So money's not always something that you've got readily available to you to therefore give massive commissions or bonuses or financial rewards. Me as a person, I am not that money orientated. I love money, of course I do, everybody does, but if my boss Jack was to say to me, Tracey, you did a really fantastic job there, and the impact that you had meant that X person achieved whatever, that means so much more to me. So I think a lot of the time we don't appreciate how important and how valuable verbal recognition is, just to go up to someone and say, you know, bloody well done, you did an amazing job. And then there's other things that it might cost a little bit of money, but not huge amounts, letting the team have pizzas at lunchtime because they did a fantastic job last week. So we're going to treat them, we're going to surprise them, we're going to get them all pizzas. That goes down an absolute treat. People in Hull specifically, sorry Hull guys that are on, they love like sweets, Haribo sweets, you know, just little things that we just chuck out every day. And then there's other things like bowling nights. And then one of the most important things that, again, I think we forget is people want to develop and they want to grow and they want to become something different. So if you start off a customer advisor, for example, they may have aspirations to be a team manager, or they may have aspirations to be an operations manager. So if you get to understand your people and you get to understand what switches them on, what they care about, you can reward them based on that. So if I've got someone that in my team was an amazing customer advisor, they wanted to be a team leader, the things I would do to incentivize them was to let them job shadow the team manager for a day, or to take over the team huddles, or to run a team meeting, and then as part of their development plan, put plans in place to give them the skills and give them opportunities to learn new skills to then become amazing in the, you know, in the job when they eventually achieve it. So I think two important things is, one, understand the person and what makes them tick. It's not always about money. And two, treat people differently. You know, just because somebody likes pizza don't mean to say that the next person does. They might want bowling night. So just mix it up a bit. So everybody's got, you know, got something to look forward to and be rewarded.
Yeah, I like that as well. And looking at like that example there of the customer service team leader and doing job shadowing and things, it kind of feeds to those other motivators, those extrinsic motivators, doesn't it? That what's their purpose? What is it they have in their own personal goals as well? And the only way you'll know whether that works is by actually spending that time and identifying those things with your people in your team.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so final question from me then. Guys that are listening, if you have any questions, by all means pop them into the chat box. But just kind of a leaving remark from each of you. Can you recommend any resources or content that you as people leaders have used, or you think would be good recommendations to get started with? So I'll pass it over to Luke first. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so for me, there's one book that I absolutely love, and it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. So for me, I think your life is very much a sum of all your habits. So how healthy you are is a sum of your habits, your wealth is a sum of all your habits. And the book basically just explores all of the science behind A, how you create a habit, and B, how you break a habit. So if you've got a member of staff that's just got terrible habits, give them this book. There's like a 4-part piece where it's like cue, craving, response, reward, and if you break any one of those trends, you over a 21-day period you'll lose a habit. And likewise, if you want to make a habit, if you can assign something to all 4 of those cues, then you'll create one over a 21-day period. So I think that's been really powerful for me, A, to understand myself, and B, to understand my employees. And if you want to help them create good habits or break bad ones, then understanding the science behind it is a really good place to start.
Great recommendation. Okay, Tracey, what's your recommendations?
So mine is a book from many, many years ago. So I worked in RBS from being 18, which is quite some time ago, believe it or not. And it's called Fish. And it's basically based on a company in Seattle, and they were a fish market. And they wanted to really engage with the employees and to make work fun, and I'm a massive advocate of that. You know, we spend a lot of time at work, we spend more time at work, I'm sure, than we do in our own homes with our families quite a lot of the time when we're not in lockdown. So to make that fun but also achieve results at the same time and deliver an amazing customer service, regardless of whether that's an external customer or an internal customer, I think is hugely important. The other model that I use is something called the BKSM model, which is, it stands for belief, knowledge, skill and motivation. And when I've managed people and very large numbers of people, I've used that model because it's so simple but so powerful. And I've just quickly written on here, it's just like a quadrant. So you've got your belief, knowledge, skill and motivation. And if you take for an example, let's say you've got someone that's not out in the field and they're not quite hitting the numbers, or you've got someone in your customer services team and they're delivering not a great customer service, it's to sit down and understand with them, what is the problem, you know, what is the gap? Is it a belief issue? Do they not believe in what do they do? Do they not believe in themselves and their capabilities of being able to do it? Is it a knowledge issue? Do they not have the right knowledge? Is it a skill? Have they had enough training? Or perhaps they're applying their what was good training but in the wrong way? Or is it a motivational thing? Are they just not in the right job? And I always find that regardless of what my issue with that person is, why they're not delivering, it will fit into one of those 4 areas. And once you've uncovered what area it sits in, then you can sit and you can work on that with them. It's always their responsibility, you know, and you know, you're going to support them and you're going to be there for them, but ultimately the responsibility lays with them. And if, you know, for whatever reason they then ultimately don't deliver, perhaps, you know, they're not in the right job, they might be in a completely wrong job for them, for their personality, for their whatever they want to achieve in life. But like Luke said before, be honest. but also treat them like adults, because I find a lot of the time, particularly people in leadership management positions, feel like they have to say to people like, you're not achieving this, you're not achieving that, no, you. And they would take on that parent-child mode, whereas we need to be, you know, like adult, have an adult conversation, have an honest conversation based on facts, on what you're delivering, what you're seeing. Yeah, and that model to me has worked for the last 30 years, so I'd highly recommend that you have a look at that.
Thank you. I'll have to try that one. That's a good one. Okay, and Maria, finally over to you. What resources do you recommend?
There's a book I really liked in business school that was called The Goal. So it talks about what I was saying before, that every organization has a goal of, you know, making a profit, and it helps you understand that and what the goal truly is, and how to translate that goal into what you do day to day, and how you can improve the way different areas work. So I would highly recommend that book.
Brilliant, cool, thank you. I'm going to share all of those recommendations, book recommendations and models on the Slack group. So just to finish up the session, for all of you who are still logged on, I've started up a Slack channel called Leadership Lounge, and it's just to kind of carry on the discussion. If there's anything that's kind of put up from these sessions, by all means share anything. I'll put those book recommendations on there as well. But it's also an opportunity for us to create a bit more of a network as leaders as well, so ask each other questions and help each other out. I've booked in June sessions now, but I'm going to do them at the later time of 11:30. I realise that 9:30 is pretty harsh on a Monday morning. So we're going to move it to 11:30 from the 1st of June, so next week. And the first session is going to be on the multiple faces of a team, so how to deal with different personalities in a team. And then throughout the month, we're going to look at how to lead during change, self-awareness in business, unlocking potential, and leading with emotional intelligence, not IQ. So looking at the emotional intelligence piece as well as leaders, and then we'll take that into July after that. But hopefully that's been a useful session. Special thank you to all of our panelists today, to Luke, to Maria, to Tracey. Really great insight there and really great practical tips to take away with it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone that's been on here. I'll share the recording afterwards in the Slack channel as well, and have a lovely Tuesday. Take care, guys.